Awesome. Well, let's get started. Hi, and welcome to Smarter Project Management with AI, brought to you by RGP. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I'm Jennifer Jones, Chief Strategy and Experience Officer here at RGP, where we help leaders accelerate transformation with strategy, operational excellence, and real-world execution. Today's session is all about practical ways to move beyond the AI hype in project and program management. We explore how AI-driven insights can improve project delivery, strengthen outcomes, and help teams dare to work differently. I am so pleased to introduce an exceptional group of experts today leading this conversation. We have Rachel Adler, Managing Director of our Project and Program Management practice, inclusive both digital, PPM, and change management solutions. She brings deep experience in helping organizations drive transformation through data and technology-enabled solutions. I also have Ryan Sly, who is a program manager and delivery lead here at RGP. He specializes in project execution and delivery excellence across complex portfolios. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Zachary Berger, who's a director in our PPM practice. He focuses on helping clients apply strategic frameworks that unlock business value and improve organizational performance. And before I turn it over to them, we are offering one CPE credit for today's session. To be eligible for the CPE, you must remain in the session for the duration and at least answer 3 of the polling questions. Also, if you should have any questions for us, throw them in the chat and we'll try to leave some time at the end for us to answer those questions. Now I'm going to hand it over to Ryan to kick us off. Ryan, let's get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. I appreciate the warm introduction. We've got a lot of stuff to cover, so let me just jump right into it. So today we're going to do a quick introduction. We're going to talk a little bit about what the AI landscape looks like. Then we'll jump into and talk a little bit about what is the business case. So how can we sort of financially speak to the reasonable application of AI for project and program management? Then we'll get a little into the portfolio optimization side of things. Rachel will talk a little bit about how we can optimize and clarify things at a meta state, scape. And then I'll get into some of the details around the applications and the automation side of things. And then we'll wrap it all up and see if anybody has any questions. So jumping right in, our sort of high-level learning objectives. First is we recommend that you do a categorization of your technologies. So whether it's separate them out from generative versus predictive, or specifically go in and look at what type of PPM tools have an AI component to them. We recommend that you analyze your cost benefit ratio. So we want you to go and understand the value of looking at the cost that you're spending on these AI tools and make sure you understand what their their key indicators and measurements should be. Next one, we'll talk about how to leverage some of the analytics, specifically providing good data, which would then allow you to do things like focus on your resource allocations. And then finally, we'll help you identify and apply some sort of AI-driven tools. We'll talk about some specific tools based on the different types of categories that are out there. All right. Before we get into the details, let's do just a little quick of a pulse check. So a couple of questions out there. First one, how would you currently describe your organization's use of AI, specific to AI in project management? So you should get a little pop-up that shows up on the screen. If you would reply to that. The second question there is, what is your biggest hurdle in adapting your AI to your PMO or your project management environment? There's lots of things that we've seen with our clients that we have to address and we have to help them with. What are your specific things that you're looking for? So hopefully everybody got a chance to see those and respond. Let's jump right in. So initially, let's just sort of set some ground stakes and explain this is our understanding. This is where we consider AI. So this is the best quote that I've been able to see that's out there around AI. Artificial intelligence is basically teaching machines or computers to process things like a human would. So at the highest level, we want to replicate, or we want to have a system or a program or a computer or a process that would then go through things like a human would. That most folks are pretty much up to speed on that. So A couple of the areas that we've seen organizations initially focus their efforts on is sort of both the generative AI side of things as well as the predictive AI. So, generative, from a definitional standpoint, this is where you're generating, you're creating new text, images, or code. These learn from underlying patterns and structures of the of data that's fed into them. So, basically, training data. And then they use that data to synthesize new examples which mimic the originals. So if you have bad data going in, then you will have bad data coming out. This is also an excellent case where large language models are an important aspect of the success of generative AI. Examples of these is what most people consider AI or most people have heard of. So Copilot, Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude. Predictive AI is a little different in the form that it analyzes historical data with a focus on identifying correlations and then calculating statistical likelihoods of future states. This is really designed around providing some insight and some clarity on what was sort of provided to them. So it allows you to sort of take it and expand or extend the data that was shared. Good examples of that include that are pure play include DataRobot, H2O.ai, or SAS has now sort of come out with a lot of AI capabilities. Not surprising. There are also several tools that allow you to use both of these. And that's a spot that we would recommend is that you look at sort of the ability to do both. Good examples that we've used, that we've leveraged in the past, have been Copilot and Claude. Those are both tools that we've had some good experience with, been able to maximize the generative as well as the predictive side of things. All right. A lot of talk is being is in the AI circles right now around agentic AI. And we honestly see that this is the future for most AI solutions. The focus for agentic is really focus is acting on its own. So you can think of generative AI as a little more of a human in the loop, while agentic is very much acting on its own. One of the things that we specifically are leaning towards right now, and the literature is backing that up at this point, is that agentic AI is a little volatile right now, especially if you're in a low risk PMO. So, project management, a lot of project management is about balancing and managing risks. And our opinion is that agentic AI, at least for right now, is a little too risky for most PMO situations. Now, there is certainly if you're in a small organization or if you're in one that is very risk supportive, then you could look at using agentic AI. I will be very frank to say that is a future spot that we're putting a lot of effort into figuring out how to get it to work or how to get the most agentic component of your project and program management pieces that you could maximize on. So we're not going to really get into agentic. To be honest, also with you, we will probably do a whole separate presentation on agentic as soon as we get it figured out. Next, I'm going to hand it off to Zach, and he's going to walk us through some of the business side of AI. Zach, you there?
Yes, I am here. Thanks, Ryan. So I think we all are interested in what this cost and how fast is the return. And when we're when we're looking at this, right, we can see that the cost benefit and what's happening in the market with AI, especially around project management, is just growing, right? So it's expected to grow over 36% within the next year. And really looking at that in dollars, it's going from about 1.5 trillion in 2025 to over a little bit over 2 trillion in 2026. And that's a lot of money to spend on AI. Now looking at the return, right? So the return on AI is based on how you set this up in your organization. So the average return is around 3.2 times on the investment within 18 months. And then there's a little caveat at the bottom, right there, or the next bullet down, where it says the value depends on the right use cases, right? So a lot of times when you're looking at the cost benefit ratio and the investment versus the return, when you're not going to get that good return is because you're not actually using the cases for AI, right? So it could be something that's more complex that the AI can't support, rather than the easier use cases such as scheduling or task management, or looking at identifying risk up front for your actual PMO, your project management. So if you look down where AI drives return in that PM world, it's going to be things like automation of recurring PM work. So think about admin, right? So tasks, status, milestones. You can look at the schedule, risk, forecasting, resources, capacity planning. The next bullet down is talking about earlier risk detection and faster issues resolution. So having this AI and being able, I think we know that if you've used ChatGPT or something like that before, you've been I guess you could call it a guinea pig of AI, right? Because you type something in and it doesn't give back what you want. So you got to teach it, right? So as you start building these projects in AI and you start having the same type of projects or a portfolio of projects, it'll start to learn certain things about risk detection, facts, and issue resolution. The last thing there we talked about is just improving the timeline and resource forecasting. And then one of the hardest things to do is really understand, when do we need people and at what time do we need people, right? We can guess, we can bring it in, as well as the timeline of a project, right? We can look at the scope, we can look at the charter, but as we do these things and we have portfolios and the AI builds the memory and processes the information, it'll be able to tell you, hey, usually this takes X amount of time, right? Or hey, usually we need these resources at this time. So those are the areas where you're really going to see significant lift from using AI within your organization. So then you look at maximizing the ROI, and I already talked about most of these, right? So you want to use the high impact PM cases, right? So risk detection, reporting automation, forecasting. Ryan touched on this, right? So prioritizing data readiness. I think we've all been part of a technology implementation. If you're going into an implementation and you have already bad data, you don't take the time to clean it up, and you're layering something on top of it that you're expecting it to give you good data, that's not going to happen. Good data in, good data out, right? So you need to make sure that your data is clean, standardized before you're actually launching these AI products. And the last thing is, treating the adoption as transformational, right? So a lot of times when you're implementing something into your workspace or your enterprise, sometimes it doesn't have the sponsorship backing or the resource backing, doesn't have the right training or the right support. And that just hinders what the ability of the technology can do, right? So I think we've all heard before, you put it in the technology and people come back and say, hey, I can't believe we spend this much money on this technology. It doesn't work. And that's usually not the case. The case is that you haven't changed your processes or had parallel processes to that technology to actually utilize it and give that lift, and also training and support to help enhance your skill set and really becoming comfortable with that technology. So those are the main three areas that we've really found in order for enterprises and organizations to really see the maximum ROI. So what we have here, there's tons of KPIs out there that you can look at for adoption of AI. These are what we found as really the core ones that we talk to and we see a lot of as we go through looking at AI tools and using them in project management. So you can see here, just going around this graphic here, the project optimization, right? So you're seeing here, one of the things that was measured is how fast can projects be delivered on time. And with AI, saying 35% faster, which that's a significant lift on getting your projects done quickly and getting them delivered, whether it's go to market or it's a strategic initiative. you're getting that into the organization faster. So then, you can go and do another piece of strategy. The admin tasks, right? So that's what we talked about. There's almost a 50% reduction in admin tasks. And that's the simple things like reporting and forecasting and capacity and timeline and scheduling. Everything that goes into probably planning and initiating these projects is becoming 50% reduced because of AI. The accuracy, right? So I think, the accuracy is more around the scheduling, right? So this helps improve it over 80% of accuracy. It improves the timeline. Could you imagine being able to walk in to a project and say, I'm 82% confident that this is an accurate timeline? I would take that 82% any day. Resource utilization is another one too, right? Look at this, 91% utilization for resource and capacity planning. So not only are you saying, hey, I know in this timeline, I'm 82% sure, but now I have 91% sure I know what I'm going to use for my people and my capacity. I mean, those two things are one of the two major derailments in project management, right? Or, keeping costs down and keeping the right delivery time. Enhanced communication, right? If you're working across silos or if you're working across global or enterprise, I mean, you're seeing here it's over a 50% improvement on communication, which is going to help, improve outcomes, and, improve your timeline, really keep the project on the rails. And the last one here, and we talked about this too, is just the earlier risk detection. So this is saying, in these projects, what you're seeing is 73% earlier, you're able to identify these risks. And I know when we start these projects, right, you kind of look at it and you say, hey, we have risk, but these are the known risks. And we sit in the room, we start figuring out, right? And then the unknown risks start to come up as we're doing these projects. Well, if you keep learning and you keep, keep feeding the AI and feeding these projects, and there's a portfolio, the AI is going to come back and say, hey, listen, remember this last project we had? This was a risk that we found 3-4 months in the project. Let's put it down now, and this is how we mitigate it, or this is a path forward. So you can see here that, these adoption metrics, very powerful, really sets the tone for using AI and the reason to adopt it in these organizations. And then I love this quote here. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically it says, whoever can use AI the best is going to, is going to be a trillionaire, right? It's not about AI replacing people. It's more about being able to use it efficiently and effectively and use it to solve your problems. And I love this quote because Mark Cuban, I'm a Pittsburgher, so he grew up here in Pittsburgh, and I think it's appropriate. So I'm going to have this question here. It's a polling question, and it says, what takes the most time in your current project management process? So if you could all, the poll will come up, and if you could all answer that for us, we would love to hear your thoughts. Oh, there it comes. I think it took a second for it to pop up, but it looks like we got the poll now. So take a second there, and we'll answer it. And then I am turning it over to Rachel to talk through portfolio optimization. Thank you all.
Thanks, Zach. All right, let's kind of take some of the words of wisdom that Zach gave us on ROI and KPIs, and we'll still hit a little bit of the conceptual components, but then I want to spend some time and actually give some real life examples of where we can see these KPIs come to life in the portfolio setting. So I want to start by saying, let's PMOs, this is not about the work that people are putting in. This is about the ability to scale when we look at the portfolio level of work. We are seeing across the board that AI is allowing us to really operate at more of a macro level without losing the details. And I'll talk a little bit more about this. But when we look at portfolio execution, we're not looking at replacing a judgment. What we're doing is we're talking about being able to see the patterns and the signals and the risks at a quicker, more granular detail. So let me start by talking about, we know that portfolio success rests on three primary pillars: visibility, interdependency management, and governance. And I know our audience today has a wide range of backgrounds and experience, but these are fundamental components of a portfolio. And AI platforms have the ability to strengthen all three of these. So let's hit the first one: anomaly detection and pattern recognition. So probably throughout all of our careers, we've been in a situation in which we've been given, many status reports, and an analyst might have to look at upwards of 20, 40, 50, depending on how long your portfolio is, to really do the analysis and look at this. Well, AI flips the model. Rather than reading the narratives, we have seen real-time AI applying patterns and recognitions to this information. It's not a single red status. What we can see, and we have seen, is we can see the deviations in expected behavior. The AI tools will show us anomalies early. And this is really how we are seeing a reactive escalation. Instead of being reactive, we're moving to the proactive. And I'm going to give you an example of this in a minute here. Secondly, cross-project correlation, the big picture. We know through data that portfolios don't fail because one project goes off the rails. I'll say it again. We know that portfolios don't fail because of the one project going off the rails. They fail because of the inability to interact with each other. In these manual environments, where we are today, projects are often managed in a silo way for lots of different reasons. Dependencies are documented, but they're not actually looked at dynamically. And this is where AI is really changing the landscape, where AI tools are being able to continuously look at these interdependencies across portfolios. They can look at schedule shifts, shared resources, bottlenecks, technologies in a heartbeat. And it can really show us some really early warning signs that are happening in these large scale portfolios. Lastly, the data-driven component versus opinion-based. So I think I can say this would speak for a lot of us here today, in that a lot of times what we're hearing is from the different levels of projects within a portfolio is very judgment-based. Status is sometimes a mix of facts, interpretation. You always have that super optimistic project, and then you always have the super pessimistic project. AI gets rid of that noise. So instead of relying on the PMs, what it's going to do is rely on data, and the AI can go through and sort that and show us, hey, where we need to focus. Governance shifts from being, us talking about, hey, what's that status, to saying, hey, we need to make some deciding actions. So, I think what does this mean for portfolio management? Again, and I'll talk about this more, but the role of a portfolio management doesn't become smaller. It actually is, AI frees us to be more strategic. So what I want to do is I want to take this from a less of a conceptual to get a little bit more tangible, to show you guys a real life example of where AI, and especially the resource management, taking that as an example of where this can really be impactful. Before I jump in there, what I do want to say, and kind of seat us in reality, in that we get, and especially with our clients that we're working with, there's a wide range of where organizations are on their AI adoption curve. Some are very mature, they've got it. Others are, hey, I'm just dipping my toe in it. I think based on some of the polling feedback, we've got a mix on the phone. But look, a lot of people are having a lot of people are working in a very manual environment still, which is okay. We recognize that the landscape is changing very fast in the AI world, but we don't want you to get held back in this changing landscape. We're encouraging to go out and let's embrace it. So here's my real world example. This was a very large portfolio environment. The organization, we're looking on the left side. I know there's a lot going on this page, but I'm going to talk through it. On the left side, the organization had had come and they had said, something's not operating as it should. We have some early indications that in this large scale portfolio, we've got some hiccups. They didn't have the visibility, given the time frames that they were working with, to actually pinpoint the issues and see them. And it was difficult because, like many of you on the phone, they have some very robust, complicated portfolios where the work was onshore, offshore, nearshore. There were people that were bifurcated by tasks, and it was very complicated. And there was a lot of data. Some of the data was coming in manually, some of it was coming through APIs. But you'll see, and I know a lot of organizations are still doing resource management from this piece, but from a spreadsheet. There was this perception and of, hey, something in some of my areas are not clicking. And what the organization thought, throw more people at it, which is, sometimes is the right answer, but not always. So when we look at the left-hand side, and this is where organizations may be now or maybe shifting, everybody's in a little different place, like I was talking about before. Resource planning, it's a lot of times in a spreadsheet. It's capacity analysis, labor intensive. You're maybe doing some tweaking on the side, pulling in data from 10, 15, 30 different spreadsheets or different systems and tools. Scenario planning is hard because you're reactive versus saying, what would happen if something happened? And in this case, one of the things that our organization was working with is there was an actual natural disaster that turned off some of the offshore capacity for a certain period of time. And at that given moment, we weren't able to say, hey, what's the impact? And that costs time. And time equals money. So there's some really real things that were happening here. Where we are today on the left-hand side is just we're reacting. We're putting in data into capacity models and reacting to what we're seeing versus being proactive. So fast forward to the right side of our screen. These are where our resource AI tools are just showing amazing, really exciting things. One thing, the executive visibility. I mean, I know that many of, in the past, a lot of time is spent putting together executive reports on what's happening on capacity planning, talking about the cost, talking about the time, talking about the gaps. Well, these tools are getting so robust in that they can provide these large live capacity intelligence views for any audience. The other thing, the dynamic capacity allocation, we can go in and say, dynamically shifting resources back and forth. And also kind of doing some of that scenario planning. What if we added 2 programs? What if some of this important resource leaves? What if we have to, change some of our funding? We can ask gap, it can pull up staffing gap identification. So, hey, did you look at this? Did you look at that? Something's different, flow through is working differently in this area of the company. And what I think, and I'm most excited about, is really seeing some of these AI generated strategic recommendations. So you can come in and the tools are saying, you ask them, hey, do I have any gaps in my data? And they can provide input. Hey, are there any levers that I can do that I can push with my people? Can I add an hour here? Can I plan for this holiday? Can I, look at different cost models? And it's really exciting to see this. What I'll say is, instead of asking a person to say manually study the data, the system can study the data, which frees up the time for the human to do the insights. I was saying not long ago that I was listening to a leader in the AI space talking, and the question was posed, what does this mean? What does AI mean to our workforce? And I think it's a question we all kind of, have probably asked. And I love the response. The response was, AI makes a simple fact of being human even more important. And I see this in portfolio management. We take away some of the noise. We take away some of the manual analysis to free us up to actually ask ourselves the hard questions and to answer the hard questions and get ahead of it. That solves a lot of issues, and it saves companies a lot of time, energy, and money. So with that, we will go into some of the other pieces. I know you guys are anxious to hear some of the actual applications of these tools, but we'll hit with a polling question. How fragmented is your project today? Most information lives in one primary system. We use a few core tools that don't fully sync. Data spread across multiple systems and platforms, heavily reliant on manual consolidation for reporting, and it depends. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Ryan.
Super. Thanks, Rachel. All right. So let's spend a little time talking about some of the application and automation pieces that are out there. I mentioned before that one of the things we recommend that each of the enterprise do is categorize your AI tools, understand what's out there, and take a structured approach to how you organize and how you leverage those tools. What we did is we broke down sort of the AI tools that are out there and we basically categorized them into five specific categories. So planning and scheduling, risk management, mitigation, resource allocation that Rachel was just showing us, communication and collaboration. That's the one that most people have seen, and then data analysis. That's the one where I see a lot of growth and capability for AI to immediately affect an enterprise's bottom line. Once you look at those and once you organize and identify what are your main categories, then a lot of the tools, a lot of the project management tools that are out there have or are building an AI tool into them. So they are not necessarily standalone AI tools, but they are tools that have the AI capability into them. What we did is for those five categories, we then went through and said, what are some tools out there that are potentially optimized for this? So some good example for the planning and scheduling. We've done a lot of work with Smartsheet. RGP has got a good partnership with Smartsheet. And we're leveraging a lot of their sort of intelligent work management tools to utilize AI inside of the tool to enhance and improve our overall planning and scheduling. Jira, through its Rovo tool, is also another thing. It's one of the highest leverage tools for planning and organizing things. And so the Rovo tool is in an instance where we're working on how to maximize and how to utilize Rovo to get the most out of it from an AI standpoint. Rachel hit on some good examples of some risk management, but there are some dedicated risk management tools that are out there. Xantum and RiskSense are a couple that we've looked at. But then some of the big picture tools like Rike, they have a risk management capability built into them. Resource allocation, we talked about that earlier. That's another thing, that Rachel was going through the details of that. There are some definite strong tools that are out there that enable folks to really put a lot of effort into and understand how you can maximize your resource allocation without using sort of a generic predictive or Gen AI tool. There are some specialized tools that really leverage and can do the most with AI. Communications and collaboration, these are the spots that most people initially get sort of dip a toe into from an AI standpoint, especially within project management. I've done a lot with Otter AI and with Grammarly's built-in AI tool. But some of the tools that have lots of different capabilities in them, like ClickUp or Asana, you can see that they show up in several different categories. So there are plenty of times when we would sort of work with our clients to say, hey, these let's identify what kind of tools are out there and let's help you pick the right tool that allows you to maximize AI. And then the last category there, data analysis and reporting, that's where I see sort of the most where we can do a lot of learning. There are some, obviously ClickUp and Asana and Rike have that. There's also this great tool, Forecast AI. It does a couple of really good things. And that's another case where you can use a more specialized tool to allow you to go a little deeper with your data analysis and reporting. All right. Automation is one of the key things that AI can help. Most people have heard of automation from a development or a coding standpoint, but there's lots of opportunities where AI can help you as a project management professional improve your capabilities. Routine task automation. So the standard status updates, the standard schedule synchronization, trying to find the right slots. These are great opportunities where you can leverage AI to help you find the right answer to things. Document intelligence, where we're actually going in and saying, hey, What are some things that I can learn from this? How can I summarize the result of this meeting? Those are great, easy to use. A lot of these are out of the box capabilities that AI can bring to the project management space. And then the last thing is the automation is one of the key things that we see where it allows the project managers to move from a more of an administrative role and allow them to pull themselves up into more of a leadership role. And that's, I think, a key capability where AI is an enabling technology, an enabling tool set for our project and program management professionals. One of the things that we've seen a lot is focusing where AI can help you focus in on your risk forecasting. So this is where we want you to go beyond just the manual sort of risk register. In the past, we've heard like in a manual environment, the risk register is somewhat of a tombstone. It tells sort of what you did when you died and who died. It doesn't really give you an anticipation of like who's going to die or better still, how can it be more of a weather forecaster? That's where we'd like to do is we'd like to use that risk register to be more of a looking forward and to identify and pull the learning from the historical data so that it can look forward and forecast out where would my next risk be. Sentiment analysis is a great tool for allowing the AI capabilities to then detect, do we see in the future a project health issue arising? Do we see something based on the communication patterns, based on the responsiveness of the team members or the stakeholders that are involved in our team? Do we start to see a pattern here? The last one here you'll see is predictive alerts. Can I use AI to identify what is the right threshold? And then can it help us signal that, hey, we're about to hit that threshold? These are great ways that we can leverage the data that we're capturing about the risks, but we can allow that data to, through the AI tools, to forecast out what are things that we can do so we can stay ahead or mitigate those risks before they become issues. Another great place that we see AI in use is in the form of dashboards. Rachel's example earlier talked a little bit and showed some examples of how it's very easy through AI capabilities to show a dashboard. Those dashboards can be in a couple of different forms. You can show AI allows you to show a very clear sort of a segment meter. And good examples of this is how are we doing from a team burnout standpoint? Or, what are some of the delays that we see in some of our communications? These are great ways that you can load a lot of data, a lot of information into a tool and then get the AI to help you do that predictive analysis and say, hey, this is what we're seeing. These are the trends that the system is anticipating. A confidence score. This is a great way that you can give a very visible number to an executive or to a stakeholder and say, I understand that our critical path delay is at an 85% probability. So instead of just sort of in the old days, we would do a little bit of a sort of off the seat of our pants. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be about a 70% problem, or that standard problem that everybody in project management has run into. Yeah, I'm 90% done. Well, okay, are you really? This allows where we can use AI to jump into the data and then extract that information out and provide us an actual measurable confidence score. The last thing here is a trend line. So a lot of times we, as project managers, we look at burn down lines, but AI allows us to put that data and then crush that data and apply different perspectives to that data to then look and say, all right, what are the different trends that we see? So instead of just a two-factor analysis, it'll investigate lots of different elements of your project's health, and it'll hopefully enable you to identify any types of tasks that are red or could be turning red before they actually do. So it's very much about staying ahead and using these dashboards to anticipate as opposed to communicate past history. All right. We can't talk about AI without sort of addressing some of the requirements that we, as within RGP, has identified across basically any type of PPM solution. There are certainly some non-negotiables. So the first would be your enterprise needs to have an AI strategy. You need to have a plan of how you're going to leverage AI moving forward. You also need to very clearly adopt and identify approved AI tools. You need to be very clear with your users about these are the right tools that we should be using. And consequently, if you have unapproved tools, you need to be very clear to say, and you should not be using these tools. Um, we've hit on data. Zach and Rachel have both hit on the fact that data is core to understanding what the success of a project would be, and how to maximize the data usage. However, you got to remember that with data comes obviously data quality issues, but also privacy, security, and regulatory issues. So you need to take all of that into account before you start loading your data into some large language model that's available to the internet and to anybody that might want to look up things. Role-based security is certainly a key element of a success. We want to make sure that when you're looking at data and you're loading a lot of data, that you've set up your AI's tools to be more role-based. That's a sort of a standard security approach, but it is important that you apply that within AI. Vendor security. So making sure you've got the right partner when you're going and picking the best AI tools is super important, mainly because you're potentially giving them some access to some data, and you want to make sure that they follow the same privacy, security, and regulatory issues that you're having to deal with. We've hit on governance. Zach hit it a little bit. We want to make sure that everybody understands that you have to have an ownership, a governance, and a sort of decision accountability when you're setting up AI within your organization. And then finally, we hit on this a couple of different ways. It's important that everybody understand that human oversight is a key element of AI-driven decisions. The AI can produce recommendations and can produce solutions to things, but we've found that it's very, very key that we keep a human in the loop. We talked about that a little bit when I introduced the agentic side of things, of you want to make sure that you've got that person that is able to review all the results that are coming out of these excellent AI tools so that you're not basically making recommendations that AI thought was a great idea, but you as a reasonable human being might say, oh, wait, hold on. That's not something that we want to recommend to either our enterprise or to our clients. So there's some definite best practices that we recommend. One, obviously around transparency, we want to be very clear about where did we get this information from and how did we load the information into it. So the documentation of the inputs and outputs are key to a successful AI practice. Standardization, specifically around data standardization, is a key element. Piloting, we really recommend that you don't do these in a big bang, just slam it out to everybody. It's important that you take it into chunks and identify, am I using AI? So, pick a project or two and pilot it, try it out for a little bit. If you try and apply it across the enterprise, we've seen that sometimes that'll be detrimental and can potentially affect the confidence that some of your end users may have in your AI solutions. Training, that's another thing that Zach hit on earlier is, hey, it's key that you do training for all of the people involved so that A, they understand how to use the tool, but B, they understand the limitations and the capabilities of the tools that are out there. Then finally, monitoring. It's not a successful solution unless you're measuring the success. Zach talked a lot about the return on the investment. That's certainly an element that we want to monitor, that we encourage all of our clients to monitor. But at RGP, one of the things that we're very focused on is that you understand what the value and the risk is, and that we enable the ability for you to do that on a continuous basis. All right, so this is a quote from an author and somebody that I've had some interaction with, and I really like to use this to sort of hit this point home. AI is great, it's super helpful to have AI help, but the bottom line is the accountability doesn't change. You, as a project management professional, are still responsible for the answers that AI is spitting out. So if you haven't been able to take a chance to review this, or you don't know where the data is coming from, you need to be sure that you're not communicating something that isn't accurate. All right, so that gives us a chance to get into our final polling question. So, question number three, if AI could reliably improve one area of your project delivery, what would be the biggest impact? Would it be faster decision making? Would it be earlier risk detection? Would it be improved stakeholder communications? Would it be better forecasting? What are where would you see the best way to improve in your project delivery? I'll give everybody a chance to reply to that.
While we're
Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
I was going to go ahead and just quickly hit a couple questions in the chat since we have a little bit of time, and then I think you can conclude to just wrap it up.
Sure.
First, Ashley Rice had asked about, for the KPIs, are these actual numbers from research conducted? What were the demographics? Would love to be able to use this as a benchmark for PMO. Zach did reply in the chat, but I just want to make everybody aware of that. He sent a link so that if anybody else is looking for that information. And then I think, Rachel, during your topic, there was a question about, can you tell us the AI tool software product that was used to get the after output?
Yeah, I think if I think I saw a note that we'll get the materials out prior to after this call, and you will see in Ryan's dashboard that there's the list of the tools that we've been using and looking at.
Perfect,
Yeah.
perfect, perfect. And then there was a question about Monday. Have you guys used the tool Monday? And any feelings on that one?
I personally have not had a chance to use Monday. We've seen Monday start to show up in some of in our polling and some of our feedback pieces, but we haven't had a lot of time to spend on it. Monday and Reich and Asana, there's a lot of commonality between those two things, or between all those different tool sets. So yeah, that's definitely one of the things that we'd be interested in. Honestly, if we had a client that said, "Hey, we'd like you to check out Monday," that'd be great. We'd love to spend some
Mhm.
time doing that.
And we,
And
as an aside,
oh,
we
sorry.
use Monday, or we did use Monday internally for the marketing team, and my team absolutely loves it. So I can
Yeah,
give a
Great.
I was
little
gonna
shout out
say
to it.
Yeah, it's
we've
a nice
gotten
light tool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've used, we do have some clients that we're working with Monday as well. Um, I think like we talked about before, the landscape is changing fast and, we are keeping our eyes on it and I think everybody feels it, but don't let that make you be fearful of using the tools. You want to be part of the change as well. So, yeah, we have been in that space a little bit.
And then the next question came from Ricardo. Wouldn't using multiple AI tools for different functions bring us back to spreading our data across several platforms? And I think, Ryan, that was during your talk.
Sure. One of the key things that we found is that there's not a sort of a one size fits all. It's not, don't put all of your tools into a single AI solution type thing. So I think the ability to look at multiple tools is an important aspect of any type of view. In a little bit, we'll talk about sort of an overall framework of things. And so looking across at different things is going to be a success point for any organization.
Okay. And I'll just do two more questions and then we'll let you wrap it up, Ryan. The next question is, can all types of resources be managed, i.e. rental equipment, tools, and contractors?
That's one of the great things about the predictive tools is that it doesn't really care about what kind of data you're loading in. You can load in lots of different data. You can load in, it's really project specific. So whatever the project needed, you should be able to take that data. You should be able to quantify that data. And then as long as the data that you're loading is clean and the recommendations are understood, you should be able to get useful information out of that regardless of sort of what you're loading.
Okay. And I think the last question, have you used PlanView?
Let me open it to
Yeah,
my other two
yeah.
folks. I think, yeah.
Um, I absolutely have teams and people that have used PlanView. So I think if the question is taking PlanView data and applying some AI capabilities to it, that is certainly a really good business case for how to use these tools.
Yeah, and PlanView's got an AI element built into it. So yeah,
Hmm.
that would certainly be one that we'd love to partner with somebody and do some deep dive work on that.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to pass it over to you, Ryan, to wrap us up. One note, in case you didn't see in the chat, we will be sending the deck as well as the survey questions and the webcast by the end of the week to everybody that participated. So thank you guys for joining. So Ryan, I'll pass it over to you.
Good. Thanks, Jen. All right. So as I mentioned before, RGP has a specific framework that we like to leverage. That framework includes the pieces that you need to be successful to be able to apply within your PPM. So the first, we've hit on this several times, governance, having a understanding of what that looks like, and basically a center of excellence mindset around the tool sets themselves. This prevents sort of a random disconnected set of like experiments, and allows you to sort of set clear decision rights, standards, and risk controls that are repeatable from an intake and a prioritization process. The next one is AI literacy. We hit on, hey, training is essential to the success of this. Um, if your adoption of using these tools is a key element of it being and becoming a multiplier. So we build these role-based capacities so that the leaders and teams know how to use AI, and then they know how to use it responsibly. And that's where the sort of the literacy as well as the overall training that the enterprise applies is key to sort of a successful rollout of enabling their workforce. Data readiness, we can't put enough emphasis on the data that you put into these tools is directly correlated to the success of the answers that are coming out of them. Bad data begets bad decisions that come out of it. AI is really only relatable when the data beneath it is has been accurately identified and cleaned and monitored. So it's not enough to just grab it one time and then assume that all following data. You also need to have sort of an ongoing review of that data readiness. The last piece is around cross-domain collaboration. So it's important to understand that within a project management space, that you're not operating inside of a bubble, that you need to reach out to the business side and the technical side and any of the other stakeholders that are out there and have them be a part of the AI tools and the capabilities that you're building into these solutions. Um, Also, more and more, we're starting to see where there is AI expertise across an enterprise. We're seeing that specifically within RGP, where you need to understand, don't think of it as just a project management process. Think of this as I would go out and want to see how all these other people are using AI so I can take those best practices and create that sort of cross-domain, very open, very collaborative solution. So these are the recommendations. These four elements are what we consider to be um, uh, uh, required for a sort of an AI success. All right, this is the call to action. So it's time. We recommend that everybody go all in. Most people have seen some visibility or some requirements around AI. We recommend that all of our clients adopt a hybrid mindset. That AI is much more of a co-pilot right now. It's not really an autopilot. It's not something you want to say, "Hey, I want you to make this decision, and I want you to turn on or turn off these projects based on your decision." No, we think it's important that you understand that it's augmented and that we need to keep sort of a human in the loop on these. We've hit it several times. Start with the data. Focus on gathering what you think could be good information and how you want to use what type of data you want to use to drive your decisioning, and then start to apply that and start to look at what the results that come out with that. That's starting with the data and approaching it from an iterative mindset. That's going to enable you to then continuously clean and prioritize that data cleanliness, but also get the best results from your AI tools. Finally, measure what matters. So, Zach hit on a lot of KPIs that are really important, but go beyond those. Identify what are the things that are important to your organization, whether it be hours reclaimed or forecast accuracy, and figure out what do I need to do to be able to get that value, and then that will allow you to get that early return on investment of your AI costs and your AI training. Um, Focus on, like I mentioned before, with small wins. Look for pilot opportunities where you can do it and then get some feedback on it before you start to do overall big bang rollouts. That will allow you to build this organizational trust. That'll also make it so that your overall enterprise feels comfortable with the change that you're introducing, so that AI is just another one of these capabilities that project management professionals can bring to the enterprise and make them more successful with their endeavors. Finally, here's some contact information for us. We are happy to talk about this. As you can tell, all three of us are very passionate about that. Within RGP, we have a lot of capabilities, and we're constantly growing and adding more artificial intelligence capabilities within our organization. We would love to sit down and talk about any of the things or any issues and problems that you've sort of thought of as we've gone through these pieces. Good. With that being said, I will hand it back to anybody. Jen, any other questions from the group?
No, unless anybody has any other questions they want to throw in the chat really, really quick. Otherwise, I think we're finished. And like I mentioned, we will send out all the materials and feel free, now that you'll have these materials with Rachel, Ryan, and Zach's emails, feel free to, follow up. And I did have one person in the chat that I know we're going to follow up with in the coming days. So thanks everyone, and hope you have a wonderful day.
Awesome. Guys, thanks very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.